with really high speed and low latency. And at the same time, it's going to take the load off your EC2 instances and is going to significantly reduce your costs. At the same time, dynamic content that is changing regularly, CloudFront can forward those requests over to the Elastic Load Balancer, which will then forward them to an EC2 instance. So that way you have the best of both worlds. You have dynamic content delivered as a dynamic content. And at the same time, you have these large videos and images that aren't really changing that often, delivered very rapidly. Now that CloudFront service or that CloudFront distribution will have its own DNS name that we can put into a browser and we can directly access that. The problem with that is that that DNS name for that CloudFront distribution will be something very complicated and just won't mean anything to our end user at all. So we would prefer to have our end user type in a domain name and have the requests for that domain name forwarded to that CloudFront service. As you can see here, we've got example.com, and that is where Route 53 domain name service can come in. So Route 53 will grab those requests for your domain, example.com, and it will forward those requests over to the CloudFront service, and the CloudFront service will handle it from then on. So let's just say we work for a large enterprise that has its own corporate data center. And the reason it's got its own corporate data center is because that is located where the employees work. And we don't want our employees to be slowed down by a network. We want them to be able to work efficiently. But at the same time, we have resources on the AWS cloud that those employees also need to access. So we need some way of having a high-speed connection between our corporate data center and the AWS cloud. And that is where the AWS Direct Connect service comes in. And that can provide a very high-speed fiber optic network between our corporate data center and the AWS cloud. And that is completely private. Okay, so that's a very complicated architecture, and don't be too concerned if that's very overwhelming, because if you're going on to become a cloud practitioner, you're not going to need to really be able to produce this yourself. As an associate level certification, that is a different story. You'd be expected to create this yourself. But cloud practitioner, you'll need to know what these services do. You'll need to know that Route 53 will forward requests for your domain name to a back-end endpoint. CloudFront will distribute your content to hundreds of edge locations across the globe. Elastic Load Balancer will receive requests and distribute those requests to multiple instances across multiple availability zones. A virtual private cloud is your private space within the AWS cloud. The AWS Direct Connect is a high-speed fiber optic network connection between an on-premises corporate data center and the AWS cloud. If you understand that, then you're well on your way to passing the Cloud Practitioner exam. Okay, so coming up next, we're going to have a lab. So make sure that you download the Introduction to AWS lab notes that come with this course. So what we're going to do is that we're going to launch an EC2 instance, and we're going to select an Amazon machine image of a WordPress web server. And that will allow us to deploy a WordPress server on the AWS cloud. And then we're going to be able to go to our browser and view our website that was created by that EC2 instance. And we're going to do that all through the AWS Management Console on our desktop computer.
Okay, so in the AWS Management Console, we go to Services, we go into Compute Services, and we select EC2. Now that will take us into the EC2 dashboard. If you've never used EC2 before, you might be presented with a welcome screen, but just go to Instances on the menu here and click on Instances. and we're going to launch an instance. Now we first need to select an Amazon Machine Image or an AMI. And that is a template that contains the software configuration, the operating system, application server, and applications that are required to launch an EC2 instance. We can select an AMI provided by AWS from the AWS user community or from the AWS marketplace. Or we could also select our own AMI if we've created an AMI previously, which we obviously haven't. So we're going to go into the AWS marketplace and we're going to search for a WordPress AMI. So they're the WordPress powered by Bitnami. That will be fine for us to use, so we'll select that one. And we're going to select the T2 micro instance because it is free tier eligible, which means that if we create this instance and then we shut it down afterwards, we're not going to get billed because it's on the free tier. We have a whole heap of other options that we can do, but we're just going to go into the configured instance details, and the only thing that we need to change here is to auto assign a public IP. So we need to have a public IP address for this EC2 instance so that it can have a presence on the internet and so that we can access it through a web browser. Now, there are a whole heap of other options that we can look at, but this is really just an introduction to AWS. We're going to do something very simple and the most simple thing that we can do right now. We're not going to get into discussing any of this stuff because we're going to go into quite in-depth detail on the EC2 service and VPC and a whole heap of other stuff further through the course. So for now, we're just going to click on Review and Launch and accept everything that we've got there. And we just click on Launch. And instead of choosing a key pair, we're going to proceed without a key pair. And a key pair is used to connect directly into our EC2 server. And we're not going to be doing that, so we're not going to be connecting into the Linux operating system, but normally you would, and normally you would download a key pair and you would use that to connect into your Linux server. But for now, we're not going to do that. And we just acknowledge that we will not be able to connect to this instance because we don't have a key pair. And we launch the instance. So after a certain amount of time, it will go through its process and will be returned to the EC2 dashboard. And there we go. So we just click on View Instances. And our instance will come up with a status of pending. Okay, so after a few minutes, our EC2 instance status its instance state has changed to running. And that means that we should be able to see our web server on the internet. So if we've selected this instance and we look at the details for this instance, so we go down here and we can see that it's been assigned a public IP address. So when we're configuring our launch for this, we did select to create a public IP, and that is a public IP address that has been created. So if we go to that, we should be able to see our WordPress application. Okay, and there is our WordPress application and looks great. So we can't really do much with it now because we need to be able to administer our WordPress application. We need to be able to log into this site and put web pages on it and whatever. So the people at Bitnami, what they've done is that when this EC2 instance launched, they created a username and password and they embedded that in the logs of our EC2 server. So when it was launching, there will be a number of logs that will output information. So we just need to go into those logs. So we'll go back into the EC2 Management Console. Again, we've selected our EC2 instance. We'll go to Actions. We'll go to Instance Settings. And we're going to get the system log. Okay, so there's the system log. If it first doesn't come up, you just need to give it a bit of time. Just go away, have a cup of coffee, come back, and the system log will be there. It doesn't automatically just come up straight away. It just sometimes it does take a bit of a while to come up. So we just scroll down until we find the section where it has our details. So here we can see we're setting the Bitnami application password to that. So we just need to copy that password. So we just copy, and we'll just close out of this. Now if we go back into our users blog, or into our blog there, and we just go to that IP address again, and we go to admin. And that'll take us to the admin section, and we'll need to put in a username. So the user will be user, and then we just need to paste in that password and log in. Okay, so there you can see, we won't remember that password. So there you can see that we've logged into our administration page of our WordPress application, so we can do whatever we want. We can, we can add some pages in here. We can go into pages, add new page if we want. We can do whatever we want as we would with any WordPress application. So that's how we launch an EC2 instance or an EC2 server to create a web server. Now that we've achieved that and we've created these resources, we're not going to need them anymore. So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of them. We're going to delete them all and terminate these instances. So what we'll do is go back into the EC2 management console. We'll go into actions, and then we're going to go to instant state, and we're going to terminate that instance. And it's just giving us a warning saying that, do you really want to do this? Yes, we do. So yes, terminate. Okay, so after a certain amount of time, and it will take quite a bit of time, that will go from shutting down to terminated. So that's all that we need to do now. So again, there's a lot more to the EC2 service that you need to know. But for now, I think you've got a good idea of how it all works. So it's now your turn to go and grab the lab notes and do it all yourself. And I'll see you in the next one.